What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another edition of the Lombard Trucking Show. We're at episode 87. Right now, I'm on a little bit of a layover. I had to stop by the house, and I'm going to get into that in a moment. I got a load that's on its way up to Minnesota. It's relying on a crane appointment, so it gives me a little bit of downtime. It doesn't really necessarily utilize my time wisely because time is still money in the trucking industry, but that's not that big of a deal. Let's get right into it, actually. Let's start off with some good news off the rip. I know normally you want the bad news first, you want the good news as the chaser. We're just going to let it out with the good news first because it's important. And I'd rather, like I said, I have this like fire boiling inside me right now that I need to like really prep for this. So let's start off with the good news, and that is Waymo is backing away from its autonomous trucks. Now, if you live in Texas or anywhere on the I-45, I-10 corridor, you've been probably seeing these absolute abominations driving up and down the highways. They're blue Peterbilt trucks with these LiDAR systems on them, and they have operators in them, people that that they've gaslit into thinking that autonomous trucking is somehow going to save the supply chain or something like that. But Waymo's decided to back off. Alphabet Incorporated is indefinitely delaying most work by its Waymo V autonomous trucking unit to focus efforts on robot-driven passenger cars for ride hailing. Number one, if I ever called a taxi cab and a car came without a driver, I'd throw a fucking rock through that window. Waymo V is the latest to head to the sidelines in a shrinking field of autonomous trucking developers. Boo-hoo! Waymo's future in autonomous trucking had been whispered about by competitors since the layoff of 12,000 Alphabet employees in January. Wow, these tech companies, guys, they're really trying to save the future by laying people off, putting them out of work during unprecedented inflation, right? Just trust the tech. They're the fucking good guys, huh? Waymo Via had been operating on a limited basis since March, but on a limited basis. The second round of layoffs, 137 employees in March, brought total cuts of the year to 8% of its workforce. Reuters responded, it's unknown how many jobs were affected by the latest move. Quote, a very limited number of roles solely focused on trucking were impacted, a Waymo spokesperson said in an email Wednesday. We were able to transition many individuals to other roles at the company that are fit for their skill set. So good. You saved a couple people there, but regardless, it's a huge win for the little guy. All of this in this entire episode is to remind you all that this is a David and Goliath story. It is the little guy, the good guy versus the enemy. We, the people, are the good guy, and we're unfortunately the little guy, and the enemy out there, people like Waymo, are the bad guys, and they just suffered a huge defeat by backing off the autonomous trucks, probably because they realize it's not that fucking easy. All these tech wizards who've never gotten behind the wheel of a truck, have never gone down Donner Pass, have never driven across I-80 in Wyoming in the winter, think that they can just magically create this tech because they worship these machines. That's the problem with these people, is they worship machines over human interaction. That's the reason why they obsess so much over this stuff. They didn't realize that they created these devices that work only under Goldilocks conditions, and that there's still a long way to go and billions of dollars worth to go. So it's good to see Waymo take a step back and admit a little bit of defeat along the way. Aurora, you're next. Trust me, you're on my radar, or should I say LiDAR. Aurora is another a huge offender right here in Central Texas too. So they're right on the doorstep, and those are people that I'll be taking on head to head as well with the perpetual shit posting. But I want to go to the border really quick. So I was in Laredo the other day, and I always jokingly talk about the Biden border crisis. But for those who don't know, it is hot and heavy down there at the border, specifically in the Laredo sector. Laredo, if you didn't know, is the largest land port in North America, and it's set to only grow larger due to a NAFTA deal, an expansion or whatever happened with NAFTA when Trump was in office, which is bringing a lot of manufacturing and warehousing over to Mexico. Like a good friend of mine said, I think he's tuning into the live stream now. A good friend of mine, Aaron, he's mentioned it's always good when the neighbor gets a raise, and that it is. It's actually a good thing that a lot of this stuff is moving into Mexico. Kind of decouples us a bit from what's going, from having all of our shit attached with China. Now, with that though, there's a lot of traffic at places like the World Trade Bridge, at the Columbia Solidarity Bridge, and basically there's a lot of bottlenecks there, and I know that that was in the news several months ago when there's always whispers of the supply chain crisis. Um, but recently, they've been trying to get these bridges expanded, and just the other day, Senator Ted Cruz and a coalition of Texas lawmakers were down there. They're urging the president to fast track construction on these international corridors. Now, I guess so. When it comes to bridges and construction in the U.S., and it's actually a large reason why we can't build things like high speed rail and get projects done, is something that's called NEPA, and you have to go through these environmental hoops in order to just simply build a bridge. You need to go through all this environmentalism. And what's crazy is when it comes to NEPA, nobody wants to touch it because since we live in this two-party oligarchy, if you talk about touching NEPA, you either hate the environment, and that's the side of, and that's what people will think of Republicans, because Republicans are always like, NEPA needs to go away, and it's just like, well, you can't just make it go away. You definitely don't want to just put bridges in the ground where they could sink a year later. So there's definitely some things you need to do environmentally to build projects. But then on the other side, Democrats don't want to touch it because they don't want to be viewed as business and all this stuff. So nobody wants to touch it. So it's just this archaic thing that's still in there that doesn't help anyone. But there's normally an exemption. So they've been wanting to expand these bridges, specifically the World Trade Bridge down in Laredo, and they've run into this roadblock, and some of it's partisan politics, because normally there's an exception that the president can sign where you can begin the construction on these projects without the NEPA inspection having already been done. Normally you can get started, and as long as the NEPA environmental checks are complete before the construction is done, then it's okay. And unfortunately, President Joe Biden, whose brain is literally melting by the second, seems to have turned this into a partisan argument. So, and look, I don't purport to be a lover of Ted Cruz himself, but he's kind of doing the right thing here. And on Monday, U.S. Senator Ted Cruz, Rep. Henry Cuellar, and Cameron County Judge Eddie Trevino had a press conference at the World Trade Bridge in Laredo, where thousands of commercial trucks pass through daily. They were urging President Joe Biden to fast track construction on these international corridors, which they say is essential for increased international trade and global commerce. Quote, Senator Cruz says, quote, "South Texas is an incredible place of vibrant opportunity and jobs in South Texas, and is driven by the powerful trade and commerce by our border bridges." Now, what's crazy is Cruz had a big win in the Senate Foreign Relations Committee recently. Yeah, earlier this month, he helped pass a measure in the Senate Foreign Relations Committee that would help hasten the process of permits at the World Trade Bridge and build 3 new bridges connecting to South Texas. He said the measures now await the full Senate approval. So you have these things passing away, but a lot of this can be expedited if President Joe Biden goes ahead and does this. Now, this would be good. This helps the flow of traffic, because what's crazy is I was waiting on a load in Laredo. Something very, and this is for different reasons. I'm kind of segueing in some of the drama down there, because there are problems at the border that are also going not talked about. And it's funny how these things don't seem to happen when a U.S. senator is down there, but after they leave. So I was waiting for a load down in Laredo. I had gotten there because I had gone live, I believe, on Tuesday to record, and I sat and waited all day Wednesday for a load out of there. Normally, going down to Laredo is easy. The yard for Warren Transport, who I'm currently a contractor for, is 5 miles from the Columbia Solidarity Bridge. They have freight coming over regularly that I can hook to, throw straps, chains, tarps, whatever it may be, and be on my merry way. And for the first time ever going down to Laredo, I had to wait. And I was going back and forth with the staff up there in Waterloo, and they were telling me, yeah, man, it's just really slow. So they had no idea. So eventually, in the afternoon, because I came to the decision that, okay, by 2 o'clock, if I don't hear anything, I'm going to go to Planet Fitness. Because there's no point. I could just, if they find me something, I'll come back, strap it, and leave the next day. But I was like, you know what? Let me go inside the Laredo dispatch office, because those guys are busy. They're working. I don't like to bother them. I go in there because it's true. The whole yard's desolate. There's not a trailer on site. And I talked to the guy. I was like, "Hey, man." He's like, "Hey, you got a pickup number?" And I was just like, "Nah, I'm wondering why is it so slow today? Did you guys really not get any freight?" He said, "Oh yeah, man, they shut down the trade bridges today." I was like, what are you talking about?" He's like, "Yeah, there was a whole bunch of gunfire and violence. The Mexican army was fighting with cartels." I was like, "Are you kidding me?" And he's like, "Oh no, man. Yeah, it goes crazy. They got like." And then he started going into detail about how sometimes that when car transports are going, they'll steal trucks off of this, and then you put machine guns on them. Honestly, it sounds sounds like shit out of a fucking movie. And so he's talking. I was like, I was like, this isn't on the news. I was like, when your trade bridges are shutting down due to violence, so foreign trade just ceases on our southern border, the largest land port in North America, and nobody talks about it. He's like, "Nah, man, you really won't hear it on the news. Like, happens too often." I'm like, "Happens too often?" Like, I couldn't believe it. And so I go and search. I go and search for this stuff to figure out what's going on. And I find one video from a Mexican Instagram account. And yeah, these guys are having a fucking full-fledged war 5 miles away at the Columbia Solidarity Bridge, absolutely like blasting at each other. And I don't know. Personally, I just think that if our trade bridge is shut down, maybe it should be on the news. Maybe it should be talked about. But what's crazy is it isn't talked about because we like to in this country, and especially this presidency seems to like to keep going on and on as if there's no problems in the world. It's probably the largest gaslighting campaign in political history that goes on with all these people at DC to just pretend like nothing's going on. Because I don't know, when there's a war at your fucking border between a huge crime syndicate and the military of an allied nation, normally I think that that's something that, I don't know, maybe we should be involved in. I mean, we spent 20 years, bombing countries that we probably don't need to care about. And yet our next door neighbor is fighting full-fledged wars against billion-dollar crime organizations, and it stops our trade. It's interfering with our free and fair trade and commerce. I think that's a reason to get involved. It's why we got involved in the War of 1812, because of free trade and commerce was being interrupted by the British Empire. But it's okay when billion-dollar cartels, who are also involved in human trafficking and smuggling, when they go to war with the Mexican military and stop our supply chains from moving. That's just, we don't need to talk about that. That's nothing going on. Notice that you don't see that on mainstream media anywhere at all. It's just not talking about it. Mum's the word. Let's go to some live comments here. We've got a gentleman. He goes, "Doesn't make the news in border states." It does sometimes, local news, because that's what I come to find out when talking to the guys who work in the Laredo office. They were saying like every now and then it'll pop off in the local news, but it might have made the news if it was the same day that a U.S. senator would be there, but instead they waited until Wednesday. They waited until Hump Day to get down and dirty on there. But all right, let's move on to the real reason why I really wanted to go live today. Because like I said, I wanted to simply enjoy this like little 24-hour stint at home. Like, I've been running and gunning all day, haircut last minute, had to get a workout in, had to grocery shop for the next week ahead. And then these headlines just, cross my mind, and it literally makes me want to cannonball off of One World Trade Center onto a broadsword, because I just can't believe that this is like still going, to the point at which mega carriers are now doubling down on the CDL Milling Industrial Complex. For those of you who don't know, who are just tuning in for the first time, real quick, to sum it up greatly, the CDL Milling Industrial Complex is a taxpayer subsidized system. So most, if not all, of your CDL schools in this country are subsidized by you. And they are funded that way because mega carriers, who are the participants of an organization called the American Trucking Association, they lobby tens of millions of dollars to buy members of Congress, who then convince the FMCSA to pass rules and regulations that they want so that they can maintain control of the industry. With this, the ATA, with their infinite amount of dollars, also uses their money and their power and influence to push major media outlets to push what's called the driver shortage narrative. The driver shortage narrative is a myth that just stems from massive attrition rates, wage suppression, lack of benefits, poor workplace conditions. And so instead of fixing these problems or making trucking a more sustainable career for the next generation, the ATA and their participating mega carriers do everything they can to just fix the turnover into their cost, which keeps freight cheap, wages low, turnover high, and also makes our highways less safe and puts your families at risk. So I use this a lot, and I'm going to say it on every episode. I talk about the CDL Milling Industrial Complex when it comes to having turnover rates that are over 100%. When you look at companies like Werner Enterprises, who at any given point in time, 60% of their drivers have less than 3 months of driving experience, you should go live in a town that has a police force with that same attrition rate. Would you love to live in a city with a police force with that level of attrition? Would you feel safe? Would you want to be there? Would you trust the people who are also in those jobs of law enforcement? Well, that's who's moving your freight right now across your highways. That is who is driving right now. And alongside of this is not only just massive turnover and everything going on, is because of these conditions and the regulations set forward, what's also gone on is indentured servitude at our ports. This is happening in the US and Canada. So there's indentured servitude going on, and there's also massive amounts of fraud within the industry, as noted when I was talking about our good friend of the show, G-Face, and his Lamborghini and Maybach driving fraudulent scam. So that's the long and the short of it when it comes to the CDL Milling Industrial Complex. All of this, by the way, can be fixed easily by changing it to where before you get a CDL Class A, you have to get a B and drive straight trucks first. And also, you can solve the fraud by making all brokers get a TWIC card, which requires you to get fingerprints and a background check. And so you can't just keep opening up ghost MCs with addresses in Phoenix, Arizona to keep your scam going. But enough about all of that. Let's get on the headline that really just got under my nerves and just got me fired up. Right from FreightWaves today, major trucking companies seek exemption for driver trainers. The FMCSA's behind the wheel requirement causing a shortage. There's the word, shortage. They love that fucking word of trainers and drivers. Companies assert. That's what they're asserting. In Washington, the training departments of 3 large truckload companies want to be exempted from federal rules for entry-level driver training because they claim it is causing them to be short of both instructors and drivers. Drivers of 3 companies, Heartland Express, Contract Freightliners Inc., or also known as CFI, and Millis Transfer, which was acquired by Heartland Express in 2019, received training from Millis Training Institute, the training division of Millis Transfer. Let's go look at how much taxpayer dollars subsidizes Millis Training Institute while we're at it. We'll look more on that. CFI is another dumpster fire company that loves surveillance technology. They wonder where their turnover is. It's because their drivers have the eye of Sauron on them 24 hours a day while they're driving. They have driver-facing cameras that are watching everything that they do. These cameras also are installed with AI and artificial fake intelligence that monitors every move that they're doing, including blinking habits, if they're falling asleep, all that fucking bullshit, which is just, like I said, it's nothing more than the eye of Sauron collecting data so that way they can sell it to douchebag companies like Aurora and Waymo. So that way they can teach the machines to de-skill and take people's jobs. They do all of this and invest billions instead of just making it a sustainable career. The article goes on. MTI, on behalf of the 3 companies, has asked the FMCSA for an exemption from regulations requiring that a behind-the-wheel training instructor have at least 2 years experience driving a commercial motor vehicle or 2 years experience as a behind-the-wheel instructor. Quote, MTI has had CDL training since 1991 and has always required over-the-road trainers to have 1 year minimum experience in order to train our students, wrote MTI training director William Griffin in the company's exemption application. He goes on, we have extensive safety evaluation processes, and only those that pass our evaluation process will be allowed to train. We have been extremely successful with this policy. Quote, at present time, since February of 2022, we have had very little success in getting enough trainers to take and train our students due to the 2-year behind the wheel rule. Hence the reason we are requesting the exemption. Griffin estimated MTI's 2023 student enrollment for the 3 companies at 500 to 700 students. 500 to 700. Insane. We currently only have 131 trainers. So with each trainer spending up to 90 days with a student before letting them go solo, you can see the companies are going to need to turn students away because of the shortage of trainers. Hold on, let's just stop there for a minute. You're going to need to turn students away. Imagine if you wouldn't even need to have enough students if you dealt with your turnover. That's the thing. That's what this motherfucker leaves out, is the fact that he wouldn't have to turn students away because they barely have any students if they just solve their fucking turnover problem. That's what this clown doesn't say. And that's my message to the FMCSA. And that's what the FMCSA and any functioning human with a fucking brain that can manage to put oxygen in their lungs needs to be saying. You're getting this many students. Why are you getting that many students? That's the real question. Sure, because I can tell you this many people don't want to drive a big truck. That many people don't want to. They are convinced to or forced to. Like I said, I went to CDL school with 3 people on Texas workforce unemployment. They were forced there by the state. So similar to the Royal Navy press ganging people into service in the 17 and 1800s, that's where we're at this point, is where the government has been forcing people to go to these CDL schools. And that's the thing. Notice MTI, this company, they have their own school, and them having that school keeps that flow of money going and going and going. So they have this constant stream of revenue while they just pay people shit and put unqualified drivers on the road. So that should be the conversation should end there, period. But it goes on. Quote, we believe our trainer evaluation process is second to none, Griffin asserted in addressing the safety aspect of the exemption. Our trainers must have no safety violations, must be able to communicate the importance of safety and demonstrate all aspects of our safety protocols as well. We are certain that our trainers and training will be a positive contribution to highway safety. Ooh, gee, awesome. He added, this is the fucking zinger right here. Best way to close out the article, and big shout out to John Gallagher, because this is just A+, like zing journalism right here. And I love it because you could tell, FreightWaves is definitely a more unbiased and fact-driven when it comes to freight reporting. But man, does he close it out. In conclusion, he added, I have no research reports or technical papers, just a sincere request from a 40-plus year trucking veteran who is trying to keep our programs running smoothly. Fuck you, Mr. Griffin. If you are a 40-plus year trucking veteran who wants your programs running smoothly, then come on this show and have a discussion with me. Come on this show, have a discussion with Gordon McGill, and let's have a fucking round table about what your school has done to this industry, and what the other schools, like the people at Werner, who have put out hundreds of fraudulent CDLs. Like what your schools and what everything you guys have been doing has been ruining the job and ruining the industry, and has ruined a career for the next generation. To now it has become this uphill David and Goliath battle to fix it. And you all want this technology, and it's all under the guise of safety. So CFI, those driver-facing cameras, guess how many thousands of drivers with 10 plus years experience don't want to drive for a company with a driver-facing camera? If you have been driving for 10 to 15 years, do you want the eye of Sauron on you while you drive? It's the biggest childish, those people, the nickname for them are nanny cams. That's what they are. They're fucking nanny cams for the industry. If I'm a 10 to 15 year trucking veteran, who the fuck are you to put a camera on me? So you're going to tell me some douchebag who's never driven a truck, who's going to tell me all this, and that? And that's what these cameras do. That's the problem. Even the dash cams. And I support the dash cams because they've saved more drivers' asses than that they've gone against. But even these dash cams, they collect data on hard braking or following distance. But I'm sorry, but when the when the random Texas driver, because I-35 might be home of some of the worst drivers in the country, when somebody, with the coffee in one hand, phone in the other, swerves in front of your truck, and then it reports to me that it's a following distance violation, we have some fraudulent things going on. But I can't believe the audacity that these people are asking the FMCSA for an exemption. Look, I worked in a warehouse wholesaler for 3 years, and I've been trucking for 3 years. And I'll tell you this, I am uncomfortable with anybody riding the truck. I've taken my wife with me twice, and I'm still nervous about it because I think it's, because of how unsafe it is, because of how I don't feel as though like I'm some sort of the best there is. You are always learning. You're always learning every day. Giuseppe just came on the show. He's been doing this a while. He's really good at flatbedding. His videos go viral for his tarp jobs. What did he say on the show? He's always asking questions. He's always trying to figure out new things. When you've put the floor, when you've lowered the standard to below zero, you're not going to get those types of that type of talent into this industry. You're not going to get those types of people who are always going to be asking this question. Gord McGill, friend of the show, we were just talking about this article today. He didn't take somebody, the first time he had somebody in his truck was after 7 years. And even then, he didn't feel as though he was qualified enough to do this. And that's the mentality of people. Even trucking's most tenured veterans, the people who are qualified to train, still just don't think that they're good enough in this, which means we need to change the system. The system needs to change. I'm excited to go to Kansas City next week to the CDLLife.com summit to speak on this at their driver panel, because the training needs to change. Think about it. There are people who have their immigration status sponsored by either family members or people who've been here for a while. They come to the United States, they have their CDL within 3 months, and then all of a sudden they are on I-80 in Wyoming in December. They're going down Donner Pass. They are on I-40 going to Tennessee to North Carolina. They are, going to the port of Baltimore. They are going far and wide across this whole country. They haven't even lived in the United States for 3 months, and we just put them in the heaviest machines we put on the road, and that's just a thumbs up. That's just okay. In what world does that ever make sense? In what world? Who are we doing any favors? How are we making this career sustainable for the next generation? Because I know you AI simps and worshipers think that the robots are coming. They're not. They're still decades away from that, especially with trucks, because they can't figure out snow. And they can't figure out the fact that one rock fucking hits that LiDAR system and a bird shits on it and it mauls a fucking school bus. That they can't figure that out yet because their computers and their fucking AI that they fucking deep throat all day isn't going to be able to figure it out. And I don't know if we as a society are going to be ready to let robots fucking maul school buses. But I don't know what it's going to take for people to wake up. Justin Martin from Freightwaves and I were talking about this today, to realize what's going on within the CDL Milling Industrial Complex. It might take a tractor trailer bulldozing a school bus for them to figure it out. And I hate to say it, but that might be what it takes. But the thing is, they're going to use that as why we then need the robots. And that's still not going to fix the issue. Why would you not just say, hey, we need to make this a better, sustainable career for the next generation? Let's look at the brass tacks of this. These companies make billions of dollars, and they simply use it to keep the problem going, to kick the can down the road, to make it fucking worse. They use their money to make it worse. And where are we at as a society where we allow these major corporations take their fucking infinite, endless streams of revenue to do nothing, to solve no problems? Where are we at? And this is a message out there to the other people in the industry, because we need you. And I'm talking about the brokers. I'm talking about people who work at 3PLs, all the people on LinkedIn. You guys call yourselves logistic professionals, and that you're experts in supply chain stuff. The largest part of the supply chain and the most crucial link of the chain are the drivers, not necessarily the carriers, because that's a misconception that a lot of brokers and a lot of people, a lot of the industry, I call them the industry because they're separate from the drivers in a way, or they've basically segregated themselves from drivers. The most important part of the industry is the driver. And the misconception is carriers do not always equal drivers. So when referred to, a motor carrier is a company that has anywhere from 1 to unlimited trucks. A driver is somebody who drives for a motor carrier. And how that carrier is treated, and how that carrier is, and how the relationship between carriers and brokers and other parts of the industry doesn't mean it's going well for that driver. At the end of the day, everything gets put back on the driver. The detention time, the waiting at the warehouses, everything. Even if there are plenty of situations where the carrier still wins, the shipper wins, and the receiver all wins, but the driver loses. And so, hey, there's a lot of brokers recently, especially with the rise of double brokering and fucking crime syndicates like G-Face and all this stuff going on, who have all lambasted against double brokering and all the fraud going on, all this stuff, all the bad parts of the supply chain. One great way you can help improve it is getting involved in everything we're doing at this show, everything we're doing at CDL Drivers Unlimited, everything I talk about with driver advocacy, going to the FMCSA, exposing the ATA and their agenda, talking about the driver shortage narrative, because if motor carriers and drivers have better careers, the better drivers are in this industry, the better your business is going to do. If you're a broker, if you work for a 3PL, if you're wondering why this delivery wasn't on time, like I've heard so many nightmare stories on LinkedIn from brokers talking to nightmare carriers. Do you know why we have those nightmare carriers? You're looking at it. Because at the end of the day, what's going on at the mega carriers and what's going on with these crime syndicates out there, like with what guys like G-Face are doing, they're doing the same thing. They're both doing the same thing. They're reporting it because the crime syndicates operate outside of the regulations, and they're working with bad hiring and indentured servitude, while the mega carriers purport this level of churn and burn that they just don't care about. And then in the middle are people like me and other drivers, people who want to fight for this industry. We're the ones who end up just getting fucked, and nobody does anything about it. And everybody lets it go. So for you industry professionals who love to put in your LinkedIn bio that you are a supply chain expert like that, we need you too. You need to be in on this, because everything that I've just talked about for the last 32 minutes involves you. And if you want your job to be a little bit better, and if you want to be more profitable, and you want your business to do better, all of this matters. Because when it comes to the supply chain, there are many links in the chain. The most important one is the driver, period, end of story. You can't get rid of them. You want to, you want the robots to come. You wish you could do it all the time. If only they can make these decisions. You guys put this bullshit technology like macro point. You need to call drivers at 2 a.m. to see where they are because you need to track. You make check calls at 9 a.m. You do all this bullshit. You'd do anything if the drivers could just go away. We know that. Guess what? They're not. So instead of bitch, moaning, and complaining about, oh, I had this bad carrier experience, maybe do something and help us by stopping the fucking system from allowing foreign agents compromise our supply chain and huge businesses fuck everyone over. That's it. That's what you guys need to do. This is a fucking David and Goliath story. I'm telling you right now, because it's hard. It's fucking hard. What we're doing, what we're talking about is hard. What I'm saying is not what people want to hear. What I'm saying is not what a broker wants to hear. It's not what the ATA wants to hear. Like I said, this is that part of the movie where the ATA is in their fucking war room and they turned on their TV and they're saying, who the fuck is this guy talking about me? They're saying they have the same mentality as G-Face. Who's this guy? I'm in a Lamborghini. That's what the ATA is saying. I'm in a Lamborghini, bro. Who the fuck is this guy? And Chris Spear, the president of the ATA, that's what he's saying. And then all of his little, his little curmudgeons are like, oh, we don't need to worry about him. He's a nobody. He's a nobody. And they click it off, and then they fucking, light up their cigars and get back to, how they could fuck up America's supply chain. But which side of history do you want to be a part of? At any time, I'd rather go down fighting, knowing I did the right thing, knowing I was doing the right thing, rather than just go ahead and say, fuck it. No, because with this situation, we're talking about the spirit of a nation. We're talking about everything that I'm talking about is indicative to every other industry going on, because like I mentioned in previous episodes, this type of stuff, the attrition, it's going on everywhere. It's going on with teachers. It's going on, Hollywood is at war with AI right now. Graphic designers, it's coming for you too. Accountants, you're gone too. Everywhere you turn, they always talk about a shortage. They love this term shortage. It should be a fucking wake-up call that, hey, maybe we need to wake up as society. Maybe we need to reevaluate where our heads are at on everything going on in all industries and how we treat the middle and working class. And we're not going to do anything by voting. Like I mentioned, Greg Kazar on a previous episode, he's in D.C. right now doing photo ops going on this thirst strike because he thinks that Governor Abbott needs to pass some law about mandatory water breaks. I don't know what year he thinks this is, but this is unrealistic, useless stuff. There are truck drivers right now who can't use the bathroom at places that they can't go pick up and deliver. They're not allowed to. And guess who runs these big shippers and receivers? Big businesses. Me, myself, I go to a Dr. Pepper place up there in fucking Dallas, Fort Worth. They have no restrooms. All they got is one porta-john. Motherfucker looks like Mount Vesuvius with no toilet paper. And the people there have the audacity, nah, man, we don't let drivers use the bathroom. What kind of fucking world is this? Greg Kazar, he's my representative. He's in D.C. fucking patting himself, taking his blood pressure on a thirst strike, doing nothing. But hey, there's currently bills in Congress right now that can help the working class, but he's still going around taking photo ops. So clearly voting's not fucking working. Like I said, it's only a matter of time before I got to come for that motherfucker's job. And it's funny because I know if I run for Congress, it'll probably fucking ruin my life, but might have to turn into that anyways. So who knows? But I'm telling you, we need all hands on deck for this because Waymo just took a huge loss. That's a David and Goliath story right there. Took a huge L. And that comes from the grassroots effort of anybody out there, anybody listening to this show, anybody talking about it, and also a hard dose of reality. But we got a long fight ahead, and there's a lot that needs to be done, and there's a lot we can do. But hey, that's going to do it for this edition of the Lombard Trucking Show, episode 87. That'll wrap it up. You see, normally people on Fridays, everybody posts that meme. You know, they like to slam they say slams laptop shut until Monday. Nah, there's nothing better than on a Friday night opening the laptop up and getting the fuck after it and getting the fucking word out there. So appreciate you guys all tuning in. Whatever you could do, if you could share the show, it helps out. Tell a friend, tell a truck driver, tell anybody you know, tell anybody who's a link in the chain. Let's get the word around. I really appreciate you all so much, especially recently with all of the news of the double brokering and stuff going on and everything being passed around. I can't appreciate everyone who's reached out to me this past week. Truly, it's truly an honor. I can't appreciate it enough. And also another call out there to anybody who is a driver or link in the chain. Would love to have you on the show. Like I said, I find true value in the stories of fellow truck drivers. I believe that they are valuable. It humanizes the job. Like I said, I believe that there's a huge disconnect between the industry and truck drivers. And humanizing truck drivers' stories is always a great way to get the word out there. These are real people behind the wheel, many of them from many walks of life who have a great story, who are just out there trying to do the right thing. They want to work a good job, an honest job, make a good living, and provide for their families. And there are contingencies in this country that want to fight against that. And to me, that's just unreal. So if you're a driver, a link in the chain, anybody you want to come on the show and talk, there's always a lot to talk about here. So please feel free to reach out. But like I said, guys, that'll do it for episode 87. We're back to the bench. Take care.